when tenants break the lease. Unfortunately, not all tenants stay until the end of their lease. So here in California, depending on the reason they need to break their lease, the tenants may or may not be on the hook for rent payments until the end of the lease. Now, how we break this up is we call it either justified or unjustified reasons for breaking the lease. Now, let's start with some unjustified reasons for breaking the lease. Some unjustified reasons for your tenant breaking their lease include them buying a new house, them moving, either upgrading or downgrading their living space, relocating for a school or a new job, moving in with a significant other, or moving closer to family and friends. Although these reasons may be valid and reasonable, they're not what we call justified. So that means the tenant is on the hook until the end of the lease term, or the landlord fills a space with a new tenant. In California, the landlord does have the duty to re-rent. So what that means is, A, you can't just let the property sit vacant and just not worry about it while your old tenant pays the rent. You have to make an active effort to re-rent it if you're going to be collecting rent from your old tenant. Plus, the only thing worse is collecting double rent. That means collecting rent from your old tenant and the new tenant for the same period of time. That's against the law. Can't do that. Now, of course, there's justified reasons for the tenant breaking the lease. Now, if the reason's justified, the tenant's not on the hook for paying the lease up until the end of the lease term or until the landlord releases the property. I've got 5 justified reasons for you here, and the first one is my favorite, and that is when there's an early termination clause in the lease. I love this one because it lays it all right out in the beginning. It's very common to have in a lease, if the tenant needs to break the lease for whatever reason, they just pay a 1 or a 2 month penalty, and then you know what it is right up front. They pay the penalty, they break the lease, it's all understood, end of problem. Number 2, the tenant starting active military duty. There's certain requirements for it. You just follow the rules. I would just say, thank them for their service, let them out of the lease, and the law says you need to. Number 3, the unit's no longer habitable. If the unit is no longer habitable, the tenant is allowed to break the lease without penalty. Some of the requirements for habitability in the state of California include clean and sanitary premises free from garbage, rubbish, filth, rodents, and vermin. Properly maintained stairways, floors, and railings. Maintained and functioning electrical, heating, plumbing, and lighting facilities. Availability of hot and cold running water. Adequate number of trash receptacles. And effective waterproofing and weather protection of the roof and exterior walls. This actually is pretty straightforward. If you're promising a habitable property, you need to deliver that. Number 4, harassing the tenant. You can't harass your tenant. If you do, they can break the lease without any penalty. And in many municipalities, you can get in more trouble than that. Some more common reasons people are found harassing the tenant include repeatedly entering your tenant's unit without permission, shutting off your tenant's essential utilities, refusing to perform maintenance obligations, locking out your tenant, serving your tenant with improper notices, threatening your tenant either verbally or physically, and of course, sexually harassing your tenant. Number 5, it's one a lot of people don't know about, but if your tenant is a victim of domestic violence, they are able to break their lease without penalty, provided certain conditions are met. Also, you're not legally allowed to discriminate against the tenant who has broken the lease because of domestic violence. And also, if there's a domestic violence situation, you, as a landlord, have to either change the locks if the tenant requests, or at least let them do so. Those are 5 what we call justified reasons for the tenant to break the lease where they don't have to pay until the end of the lease term. Now, bottom line, there's a lot to it, and it can be confusing, and there's a lot of legal stuff and what have you. So for the legal questions and advice, please, I urge you, contact an actual attorney, preferably an attorney with specific experience and expertise in this area of law. And if you'd like to find out more about any real estate questions or property management or something like that, we would be happy to help you with it. So I hope you found this video useful, and please like and share, and see you next time.